Wonderful good day, everyone. My name is Svenja Schäfer. I'm the host of the Opinionated thoughtbotter. It's a show where we talk about one of the opinions of my fellow colleagues here at Thoughtbot. We will dive deeper into what they believe in, and I might agree or I might disagree. I will definitely share my opinion in all of these episodes. With me today is Richard. So before we talk about your opinion, can you say a few words about yourself?
You bet. Uh, Good morning, Svenja. I know it's afternoon for you.
Good
Good to see
morning.
you again.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Uh, I'm Richard Newman. I'm our Director of Software Engineering for our Americas Group, and I am over here in Idaho in the United States.
It's really nice to have you, Richard. I'm looking forward to talk about your opinion. What is it? What is your opinion?
The way we do education for software developers has been wrong. Uh, Bachelor education in computer science would be better served by being in software engineering instead.
Okay. What does it mean? What is different? What is a bachelor level?
So most folks, when they're wanting to be software developers, end up going through and getting a computer science degree, which a lot of folks that do this job would be familiar with. You do a lot of work understanding data structures, and you understand quite a bit of. You generally get close to a math minor. You might have picked up some things having to do with writing compilers or working with grammars and dealing with um, operating systems and so forth. But for those of us that write software in general, especially for whether we're doing it for commercial reasons or doing it uh, in research purposes and so forth, what we're really trying to do is write software in a timely manner in the context of the resources we have, following practices that the overall field is familiar with, and that can be maintained in the future. It's a little bit, it's pretty similar to the situation of, say, someone being an electrical engineer only having studied physics and picking up, electrical theory through physics, but not learning anything about what it takes to actually manufacture boards, to be able to do it economically with the resources that are available in a repeatable fashion over and over again with some reliability. And so, in software engineering, that's what you would focus more on, is that economic sort of focus. What do I have to do in order to put reliable software out there? What do I have to do in order to work with folks and users that aren't computer scientists or aren't software engineers in a way that actually meets their needs? We all know that challenge starting out in our careers when we haven't done it before, even if we have that degree. So we really should be preparing ourselves before we enter the workforce with it.
What kind of course would you like to see?
Well, one of the things that's really interesting when you actually compare the requirements, and I couldn't say how it is, say, in European universities, but for American universities, at least, if you were to compare, say, a degree in marketing or business, and you were to compare the requirements for computer science, to go from one degree to the other, to take, you earn the credits in one bachelor's and then go ahead and try to earn them so that you can complete a bachelor's in computer science. That number, that difference is higher than most other degrees that you would compare. Even if you were to compare, say, computer science to kinesiology, being able to do physical fitness, that's actually closer than it would be if you're trying to compare it to, say, marketing or business. And so being able to talk about what are some of the things that, drive some of the decisions that you have in product management, the idea that you have positioning and that you can't just write software that somebody's not going to buy. You have to write it in a context that is small enough economically that you can get it out there. So some introductory courses or some basic sort of survey courses in topics of marketing and business would be one area that you could improve the the readiness of folks going through it. And then from an engineering point of view, I mean, the thing that makes it engineering is being able to do it in a reliable way. So the idea that you have test passes, the idea that you have to be able to deploy it in ways that are repeatable and documentable and auditable comes up a lot. And so being able to know that out of the gate, rather, most computer science courses only have, say, 1 3 credit course, or one small course if the credits aren't familiar, but and that's it. And so being able to actually have that be more your focus would have students much more ready to do software engineering for their career.
I find it interesting. So I didn't study. I don't have a computer science degree. I joined a boot camp. Well, actually, I joined 2 boot camps. First one was about Ruby on Rails, and the second one was about JavaScript. But I do have a degree in graphic design, like a bachelor level degree. But well, you have different types of degrees in Germany, where I am originally from. So it was what is called, how is it called correctly? Something like blah, blah, engineering with a focus of graphic design. But what I wanted to say is we did have this part of product management, and it was called, okay, in German, Zusammenarbeit im Betrieb. So how do you work together in an office? Like, it's so important. And for me, it was a really nice course. I really enjoyed it. And I do think it is important. This is, especially when you work as a consultant who code. But I also believe it makes your life easier when you are, for example, working in a product company as a developer, when you know how to deal with actual people. How do you want to explain new features that you're about to implement, or how do you explain a bug that comes up? Everything needs an explanation, right? I'm not sure, is this like in computer science, does it come up at all? Like some kind of, or some form of psychology?
No, not particularly. I mean, a student in a lot of universities has the option of taking some electives, and so they may hit
Mm.
into it if that's an interest area for them. But there's nothing about the curriculum or the degree itself that requires that they go there. The only writing is maybe a couple of very early English courses. So being able to communicate in writing, and can be a really important skill for people doing software engineering, and being able to communicate their ideas. And yet there's not a lot of training for any of that. So in the actual coursework assigned, as either in the major work or the required courses ahead of it, it might come up anecdotally, but it certainly isn't a focus or a curriculum topic that gets tested against.
What's it change now with a bachelor level education?
It you What we normally see is that in the United States there are some master level degrees in software engineering.
Hmm.
So generally, folks have finished their computer science and they may do it at the master's level. And there have been 1 or 2 now bachelor level courses starting to come out, or bachelor level programs starting to come out in software engineering, but it's not prevalent. It's not the sort of thing that you would expect students entering college to hear about unless somebody were to pull them aside and pointed out what the difference is. So it's very much considered the typical track to go down the computer science route. Now, you definitely have a number of people entering in the way that you did through boot camps. I myself didn't have my bachelor's until my late 30s, so I was in the same boat, picking it up and without necessarily having had the computer science side of it. And I've taught in boot camp scenarios. One of the nice things about being able to teach in the boot camp scenario was that idea you could really focus on making something. It was a natural part of, I'm making this to create software for people to use. And so let's have that in mind as we go forward, rather than the computer science route of, I want to play with this algorithm to understand how efficient I can make it, or if it matches some, runtime parameter or so forth, or some grammar exploration that users just aren't going to care about. So the emphasis is different, but boot camp, you get to do that right away. So it can be a great way to come into it.
It can be. I do think lots of boot camps lack of something. Like it felt like they scratched the surface and that's it.
Hmm.
So, for example, like testing it was not really covered. Like in general,
Hmm.
it didn't give that importance that it should have, in my opinion, and of course, in our opinion. Um, yeah, I wish it would. And I do feel like sometimes I don't think that I lack of something, like that I miss um, some knowledge, because every knowledge that I don't have, I can look up to if I'm interested in, or if I have to. Um, yeah, I do think it's a personal decision when if you choose a way of a boot camp, what do you put into it? Because only joining a boot camp, I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, and all the boot camps are different too, right? I mean, some of them are just a few weeks, and some of them can be, year-long programs. So they're all going to differ. And you're absolutely right. They're that initial being able to do something enough to say get hired at a certain, at a beginning level, and they're not going to have some of the other theoretical things that you would pick up on or have that deeper understanding. So to be fair, I don't disagree with you. It does give you a perspective, though, that doesn't necessarily come up in the computer science realm. And so the things that I would want to also see in a software engineering degree that are covered in computer science would be things like data structures. Those are worthwhile to understand. And one of the most useful courses was um, linear mathematics, being able to understand sets and groups and edges and graphs and all of that sort of thing. That I use all the time. um, some appreciation of compilers and parsers, doing a survey course, usually at least in my coursework, it was a junior level sort of thing, or late sophomore. So, those were all worthwhile. What I didn't necessarily need to do, although I enjoyed the courses and I found them intellectually, fun, was things like, theory of computation or writing compilers, at a deeper level. It's just not something that typically comes up. It's, I'm aware of it because I took the coursework, but have I used it again? No. Have I written a lot of low level, operating system stuff? Not so much. Could I? Yeah, that might be relevant, but it's not the core of what I do. So I think the thing that I most, see a value of the boot camp is it's a way to get started. And there are a lot of people, that's the only practical way for them to do it. If you're going to go through a 4-year education and all of that it entails, and you've got other things going on in your life, you're raising a family, single parent, you're coming into, whatever your economic situation is, those things can be really real key obstacles. So a boot camp, walking in and knowing when you get your first job that I can at least do this, and my perspective is to write software that works, even if I don't know everything about how to do it, that's a good place to be coming in from.
Yes. And I think I would be so scared to learn about algorithms and so on. So every time I see or hear HackerRank or something, I'm just like, I don't think my brain is made for that. For me, clean code is beautiful, but sometimes on some level, it's intention. No, it's how do you say that? Yeah, it's is it intent? No, is it intention? Um,
Intuitive.
no, intuitive. Yeah, intuition.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the same with English. I have no clue about the grammar, but sometimes it just like feels correct, and that is my intuition, and might not be correct, but it's just like it's the same with code. So
But
yeah.
that right there is a point that we would talk about in engineering more than we would talk about in computer science. In computer science,
Mm.
I would care about the mathematical algorithms. I would want to be able to prove that this, sorting algorithm is more efficient than this one because I'm trying to understand and push the boundaries, or at least have an appreciation of what it means to get a computer to work with information this way. That's a very important skill to have. It's very important that we have it in the field, but it is not an engineering perspective for the most part. In most of the cases when we're writing software, the idea of writing intuitive software is something we talk about wanting, that the next person coming into the code can understand what we were trying to do, that it looks like it relates clearly to the problem, that it isn't overcomplicated. It's just as complicated as it needs to be and no more complicated. But that notion of intuition, that's actually really important. But to have that intuition, you have to build that up. You have to understand what people are trying to accomplish with it. You have to
Yes.
understand what users might want to see from it. You have to be able to articulate the problem statements in terms of a layperson that isn't a computer programmer. And so that requires you get exposed to those sorts of things, that you are writing more, that you are talking about product management sort of topics or marketing or business or what have you. All the
Uh,
things you just said are important to being an engineer and being a strong one.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty
um,
confident you do fine with algorithms. We would just it's just like anything
yeah.
else. You go through it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, I always like to know how something works the way it works and why it works like that. So, um, I'm genuinely interested in the basics. I want to
Hmm.
know why it works like that. So this helped me a lot, to be honest. Yeah, but still, I freak out when I see algorithms. Yeah, maybe just like because the way they look like. I do love regular expressions, right? Don't get me wrong, I do love them. I want to study, and I want to study psychology.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I checked it was some remote courses. The costs vary a lot. And I also checked them in the US because it would have been nice to do them in English. I'm going to do that in German now, but the costs were, I don't know how you say it, exorbitant, or it was
Hmm.
a lot. I mean, I can't, no, that's not possible. Um, are the costs or will are the costs different between software development and the um, computer science?
The way I've been thinking about it, no, they wouldn't be appreciably different. Um, Now, boot camps are quite a bit different because you're not necessarily talking about doing 4 years. But normally a bachelor's education in the United States would be, nominally a 4-year degree, if you were to go full time at a steady pace. And so I would imagine the software engineering degree would be similar. But you do bring up an interesting point. In American universities, we also have the notion of an associate's degree, which is a 2-year degree rather than a 4-year degree. Um, and normally an associate's degree is going to be centered around, a lot of core classes, a lot of, things that are more preliminary before you go to a deeper major. But a lot of times they are, field specific, so they will emphasize certain things. And so you could imagine doing some sort of software engineering treatment that was more at the associate's level, that was more than a boot camp, but less than the full bachelor's experience. And that would be, more reasonable to do. Um, that's a little different than, say, what we have our trade or vocational schools here, which are handled much differently. So the associate's degree is somewhat the same length, but it's more preparatory for continuing on to a bachelor's. But that's an interesting thought. I could see doing something at associate's level for software engineering.
That would
Now I
be
want to
really
go
nice
off and
then.
design the curriculum. That seems like fun.
Oh, I always like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, I'm really interested in psychology, like in general, and I
yeah.
do think it's we are surrounded by it and every day. So yeah, no, I do gonna do the full course, like the full bachelor, and then afterwards a
Hmm.
master.
Oh, cool.
Because why not, right? Why not? Um, and yeah, but I just like saw that it was really really expensive in the US, in the UK as well, and private universities in Germany as well. So, but there is one public university that is fully remote, and that's quite affordable. So
Yeah.
I will gonna go with that. Um, yeah, boot camps I know are quite different as well. They're just like some they are really expensive, and everyone just like says, "Oh yeah, we will." Um, And sure, you're going to have a job afterwards. And I do think this is something that gets the people to attend boot camp, and maybe just like maybe they are not interested in it. So I
Hmm.
don't know. Um, I don't know. I could never see myself studying computer science. I could see myself studying software engineering, to be honest. Just like, yeah, getting a little bit of more history about where this come from. And yeah, I think I would like to know and learn more about this in a more structured way, because structure is very important to me. Yeah.
It does help you kind of know where to navigate.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the idea of an engineering degree in any form is about making something. You know, can you make something and have it into people's hands? So yeah, I could totally see that. And as an
Yeah.
aside, the psychology side is really interesting. When I went on later and I got my master's in business, and I always wanted to continue with organizational psychology because that's an interesting direction. I mean, there were other directions that were also interesting, but that one was always fascinating to see how people work together and what has a group of people be more effective. So yeah, very relevant.
Yeah. We will talk about more when I start
Yes,
once I start studying. Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Really,
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
good for you.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I missed um, the time when to sign up for this year,
Hmm.
but so I have to wait. But yeah, I am not a big fan of AI. Do you think? But I have to bring it up because, especially, I'm not fully against. No, I am fully against it in the area of education, because I do feel it makes people more lazy. They do, when they start out with it, while they usually should study something. Um, I feel that they forget to fact check the result some AI tool gives them. Do you think? No, first of all, what do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
There is truth to what you're saying. There you do take a risk on laziness, but um, it to me it's akin to okay. There's a little gray in my beard. You might have noticed. When I was in high school, slide rules were still around, and calculators were just starting to be a thing. And the big concern was, well, nobody's going to be able to do to be good at math. They're going to just depend on the calculators, and the calculators are going to do it all for them. So this sounds very much like the same argument. And the fact of the matter is, yeah, there definitely are people that didn't learn what they should have learned because they relied too much on it. And eventually we found that right at equilibrium. Okay, it's a power tool. And like most power tools, if you learn to do it by hand first and understand how to do it by hand first, using an actual, I'm thinking about actual wood shop now, but doing something by hand and being able to do it correctly, you understand how to use the power tool more, and you actually become, more capable because of it. You can do a lot more with it or do things you couldn't do before. And so, same thing with calculators. I can do things with it much faster, much more accurately, and more precisely once I know how to do it. But if I'm just like turning off my brain and just expecting it to do all the work for me, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's a tool for me, not the other way around. So AI suffers from the same thing. If you use it and just count on it doing it, and I understand the, attraction or the temptation that might be there, but the fact of the matter is we're already seeing the backlash that people are going, I don't trust
We
this work.
do.
I don't
Yes.
trust what I'm seeing here. It reads wrong. It looks like you didn't try to do this well. You just created things and it doesn't even look checked. So now I can't trust anything that you've done. Over time,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
pretty quickly comes back as a feedback loop, and people recognize, oh, I can't just get away with that. I can't just do that. It's tough in that you talked about it in education. Now that is a tough area and it's very challenging. You see it all the way from, secondary education, and all the way through in deeper levels, and being able for an instructor to understand um, whether they're actually reading real work or whether they're just something, that generated by an AI, and it can be challenging to tell for sure. Um, how did they solve it with calculators? They said, well, show me your work, write it all out, let me actually see what you did. And, can't, if even if you're going to use a calculator, you got to know what you're doing to pull that off, right? What we're seeing now in education is, blue books are being brought back. You have to handwrite your essays in the class. You have to be able to talk about it in, an oral,
Oh,
topic. We
really?
just change our
Yeah,
techniques and we go back to what actually puts the person in the situation where they have to show that they can do the work. You have to show
I
your work.
like that.
So,
Yeah.
but I think it would be a disservice to not have students understand when and where AI has a place, because it will be there. It's not like this is going away because we wish it wasn't there. It's going to be there. So how do you use it responsibly? How do you use it so it's the power tool that you can actually apply to do things faster or better than you could have done by yourself? And so, yes, you have to be able to master doing it by yourself, but we do need to talk about how to integrate AI, not to try to keep it out completely.
I agree. Yeah, I think that that makes lots of sense. And for that you do you need good educators, good teachers, good yeah, mm, people who know the psychology behind it. Because there are lots of times it's just that I do understand why people use AI for lots of things they maybe should not, but because they don't have time, they are stressed, they have to work faster and faster and faster, and it's they have to learn more and more, and then they are just like they have to work during days, during the night, and then there comes up the project that they have to deliver. So why not ask ChatGPT to do it? I do
Hmm.
understand it, and I do think it's important to understand the reasons why someone uses it. And if you can change something or adapt the environment around it to not make it seem like it's a necessity to use it. But yeah, what I was wondering about, do you think there will be a decrease in university or in degrees about like in people who are going to study because of AI? Because they believe, oh, well, I don't have to know it anymore. I don't have to learn it because I can just like ask.
I don't think that people won't want to be educated because AI exists. The emphasis in the education on various topics may shift because of the presence of AI, just like it shifted in other sorts of advances uh, throughout the decades. There are lots of pressures. It's a big question because you've also got these huge economic issues around education, and I don't think that's just limited to the US, but certainly a lot of people are making that decision about, am I ever going to recoup the cost of my education throughout, whatever I think it helps me out in earnings power. And I think that's depressingly sad, not just because not just because of the expense, but that we've reduced the thought of being educated to an economic choice rather than an improvement of of potential, of what it means to actually understand the world around you. And if you go back, 100, 200, 300 years, while it was a very privileged sort of thing, given circumstances at the time, there was an aspirational side to being educated. I want to understand the world around me. I understand how things work. I want to understand how these people clear across the ocean, how they approach life, or want to investigate, where the South Pole is, or what have you. Whatever that education meant to them, there was an aspirational quality that wasn't tied to what I think I can earn once I became educated. It was because I wanted to be educated. Um, it's a shame if we've reduced things so far that people just don't want that with or without AI. That would turn into, okay, I'm kind of picturing the scene from Wall-E where everybody's just running around their lounge chairs. It's, there's no aspiration at that point, right? And so AI shouldn't be taking that away from it. But I do think it kind of changes, what you might
Yeah.
emphasize. It's not like we spend time in grade school learning how to do math with Roman numerals anymore. Why? Because it's not relevant. We don't spend a lot of time learning cursive writing as much anymore because it's not relevant. So do some things change? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you don't get educated. It's just make the education relevant.
Gosh, I love that. I also really like the aspiration. It's yeah. I always say like it's the intrinsic motivation, and I do think it's important to keep that, and that everyone out there finds their intrinsic motivation to do something that they really care about, and then yeah. And we are at time, Richard. Yeah, it just like flew by. Anything that we missed talking about that you want to share?
Oh, Svenja, you and I can go on for a while.
I know
It's
we
always
can.
lovely having a conversation with you. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, no, I think we covered the essence of what we wanted to talk about here today.
Cool. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope to see you soon again. And yeah, let us know in the comments what's your past. What was your past? Did you join a boot camp? Did you go to university? Did you study? What did you study? Yeah, we are interested to hear that. And we're going to continue the conversation in the comments. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Yeah.